Session 8. Here we are at early December, December 6th. And let's see what tonight's session holds for us. The outline for this evening, we're going to hold the cooperation. And the participants will be offered a chance to reflect on the strategies that they implemented in their code. And we'll review some of the code that was submitted. And then we'll run the cooperation and just review the results. And then reflect on that and see how that was. Then a question is, well, how can we build upon this cooperation? The cooperation was designed to be accessible both to brand new coders and seasoned coders. And also it incorporated elements that have overlap with the programming of an FRC robot. And the whole point was to apply the basics of Java that we discussed in earlier sessions in a creative and open-ended sort of way, thereby giving opportunity for some to submit 5 lines of code, while others may have submitted more like 100 lines of code. And the submissions we received were more like 100 lines of code. It was quite well done on the part of those who submitted the code. But maybe we can further build on that with now our newfound or seasoned or rekindled love of Java. Perhaps we can go on to some other collective activity like a robot dance recital, first virtually, and maybe even with a real robot. So that would be something that we can do using the simulator and possibly even a real robot. And then we'll finish out this evening with questions. Maybe there's some coding to troubleshoot. Maybe there's some topics of interest for January, things like that. All right, and our schedule, October to February, the first big section of our schedule is sort of finished now, as now we're in December, and perhaps the participation in a coding cooperation might be considered an intermediate kind of activity as we're applying newfound skills. And into January, we'll have some more intermediate activities and hopefully some advanced ones as the season moves on. And last time, of course, we spoke a little bit about the example strategies for the cooperation. We spoke about the robot simulator and had a few examples of how to get it working. And then we had some discussion about connecting hardware and software. And we'll do a little bit of that this evening. I don't know if I put that in there. I actually should have put one more point in there. And maybe I'll do that right now, as I was hoping to do some building on our hardware discussion from last time. How can we implement a switch or a game controller or some kind of actuator into our robot code? And so that's coding features into a robot program, such as switches and motors and servos and the like. All right, so our FRC cooperation. So if there are any last minute entrants, as this is a rather informal cooperation at this level, we'd be very happy to receive any last minute code. The reasoning behind this is not a high stakes kind of competition like the FRC main season robotics matches, but it's a friendly sort of cooperation to allow everyone to explore Java code as it applies in various contexts, such as running a method inside a game to implement a strategy. So with that, if anyone has a last minute strategy method that they would like to submit, I don't mind putting it into the game, as we have a few spots available. And other than that, we will have some time right now to review some of the participants' strategies. So this is, of course, completely optional. So what I will do is I'm going to review the strategies that have been submitted And if you would like to comment, you can just turn on your microphone and begin speaking about your strategy that you submitted. Or if you would not like to, that's quite fine as well. So you can also offer in the text any insights or thoughts about the strategy that you implemented. And we can explore the connection between the verbal description of your strategy and what it looks like in code. With that, let's just switch to our code here. Our autonomous play now is quite a long file, and an interesting thing for us to reflect upon. My initial thought was that our strategies would have been rather short. Upon reflection on the submitted code, they got rather long, and perhaps if I did this game again, I would suggest, or I would re-engineer it for the strategies not to be a method, but an entire object. And there are a few reasons for that, as this game was kind of made up on the fly. Reflecting on what everyone has submitted, everyone made use of features that were actually not available in the game. But because I was just interested in how this would turn out, the game has been modified in a few cases to make accommodation for your like creative interpretation of the game. So one example, more than 2 weeks ago, a few features were added to the game further to a few conversations with participants. And then today, there were some very light modifications made to allow code to work. And I'll explain why as we go through here. And I think this is very informative and will help us to understand the structure of computer code and what is possible and what is not possible. Let us explore now the new version of our public class, Autonomous Play. And we will leaf down through here. This is our validate command. And every established price is run through this command to make sure that it returns correctly. There we are. So the prices should be within the range 0 to 100, not including the endpoints. If it's 100 or above, then I just return a 99.99. And if it's 0 or less, then we return a 0.01. So this takes care of any code that may have unforeseen bugs in it that may on the surface look good, but under certain circumstances go out of bounds. Okay, so that's kind of a cushion for your coding. That doesn't always happen in real life. We could probably try the game without the validate command and see if it still runs. That would be interesting. Okay, so the first strategy submitted here was strategy 6854. It's actually not the first, it just happened to be copied and pasted in that order. A question, there were several teams with multiple people who signed up, but each team only submitted one set of code, and that was maybe possibly due to the naming convention introduced that was by team. If I did this again, I would probably introduce something like A, B, C, and so on for different members of the team so that everyone may feel free to submit a strategy. Even so, the teams all submitted one strategy per team. So,
or you could possibly just like say like put in under like you could possibly make like format underscore and then the person's name.
Yeah, that would have been quite fine. Something like this. That would have been great. And so maybe in a future iteration of this theme, that's what we could do. So yeah, I wish that had been a little bit more clear because I realized that the naming may have reduced the number of entries to our cooperation. Even so, that may imply that those who signed up from different teams collaborated and cooperated in generating the code, and that's also great. So the real objective is to just maximize the learning opportunity. All right, so would anyone feel inclined to comment upon the strategy of 6854? I'm going to go through the chat here and see what we have here. Ah, yes. Good. And so there's some interesting commentary about getting camera and sensor input, and we can even begin that this evening with some sensor input and maybe even a camera input and see how that works. A limelight. I'm just wondering, what is a limelight? Maybe I'm missing something here. Is
So
it?
basically a limelight, we used it, our robot used it in 2020. It's
Oh,
basically something that can like the tape that they put like on the goals in
yes,
2020. Like, do you know
yes,
like the gray tape that they put? The limelight can basically like auto align the shooter to the most beneficial space for
yes.
the shooter to
Now,
get the best accuracy.
now I remember. I just don't call it a limelight. I call it an LED ring set to green.
Our team calls it a limelight.
Excellent. Well, I'll call it a limelight gladly. I actually did a session on that at the SWATposium, and maybe I can put the link to it in the description. But we can also go into some more detail about how to get that working, because the limelight is just one component of many. And for example, this is an example of a Raspberry Pi that we used to process the incoming camera signals and filter out the targets with the retroreflective tape. So that's something we'll gladly be able to put that together in January and maybe elaborate upon the SWATposium session. So that's good. Interesting. There's a question about the method returning $50 each time. As far as I've tried, all of the methods submitted different quantities during each round. So that was good. Although it may be slightly different because we do have random players involved. Oh yes, it's most okay. I don't really, a copyright. I basically copy left my material and put it up on the internet and expect that it is completely open source. So interesting. I remember now that limelight, I'm just commenting on the comments one by one. I remember hearing that at some competitions, but we, I guess, persisted in referring it to as a green LED ring. And could you also use an Arduino? Indeed, we used an Arduino in our team to generate the green light, and then we used the Raspberry Pi to process the input from the camera. It was pointed out at the SWATposium that the Raspberry Pi is perfectly capable of generating the signals used to create green light with an LED ring. So the SWATposium it's an annual conference organized by Team 771 SWAT. And it's usually in person at St. Mildred's Lightbourne School in Oakville, Ontario, although in the last 2 years, it has been moved to a virtual format. And this year, I made a presentation. It was just a week or so ago, or maybe 2 weeks now. Anyway, it was some time ago, not too long ago. And my entire topic was the limelight, though I did call it vision processing and not limelight. And,
are the sessions from that SWATposium available online?
I believe so. I'm going to check that there was a recording made. I think there was a recording made. At very least, I do have the slideshow, and we'll see what we can dig out of my computer archives and post them. Maybe I'll see if I can post them on our website tomorrow, along with this video.
Possibly it's on Team 771's website or something like that.
It could be because it was their Zoom call, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that's right. I was using my computer, but maybe not my Zoom. So definitely I can make the some of the code and then the slideshow available, and we can approach the SWATposium team to see if we can also get a link to the presentation. So that would be great. And I think that would be an excellent learning opportunity for after the holidays, how to hook up a vision processing system. Excellent. Okay, so we'll go down into strategy 6854. It returns 80 as a first guess. And if anyone has any rationale for their thoughts, please share that with us. At the moment, we know that it's the first round, so we start with 80. That was the rationale. There may be some more to it. Now, the second to the fifth round, it's an interesting structure of the code here. This code executes only if the round is won. If the round is not won, then it goes on to this code. Okay, and so in the remaining times, we look here and make 3 variables. And I must mention something at this point here. At some point during the development of the game, I made a slight modification to the public versus the private variables. And so what I published in the game manual was actually access to the private variables. So I did make accommodations for that, and everyone did correct calls to the variables as I specified in the game manual. It just turns out that I had forgot to update the manual without outward facing set of getters and setters. So for example, get expenses here was just get in the original code submitted. So I made a few little modifications to everyone's code and apologize for that, as the development of the game was rather dynamic and was reacting to everyone's input. So it was a kind of a non-linear process.
William, can I ask a quick question? With the current, why in some cases did we need to specify current game details?
Okay.
And other times we didn't.
So here's an interesting sort of distinction. And Jana, the way that we handled your code, we did it a little differently. So let's just look back here. When we start out at the very beginning of the method, current game details is holding a set of variables that were listed in the game manual, including the previous prices, number of customers, and the like. To get access to them, there are a few approaches. And what we did in your case, Jana, after a few discussions, we did something like this. Say we wanted the previous prices. Something like this. And the previous prices is going to be a variable of type array list. And these are floats. And there it is. Okay, so there we've set a variable of previous prices. Now, once we use this variable previous prices, it's now a local variable.
Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, now it's been declared in this local set workspace.
Yes.
So we don't have to keep referring back to the game details. Got it.
Good. And but if we go down here, we used current game details and extracted everything all at once. So first of all, we use the get expenses, and that returns a list of 6 expenses. And then we use the .get because it's now a local variable and we don't need a private method to access it, or a public method to access it. We have full access to it. It's now incorporated into this method. So we can just use the get and get the current game, we get the expenses for this team, which is referred to by current game details.myIndex. I could also declare myIndex at the beginning to sort of shorten down the code as I go. So that's an option. And that would have actually shortened this line and this equation a little bit. Okay, so
question.
Sure.
Why is this line like split into 2 lines? Is it just because of readability's sake?
I believe so. And I'm thinking that this may be, oh yeah, no, that's a division sign. In Java, it doesn't really matter when you start a new line, it doesn't care. A Python person would be very uncomfortable with that. And we could have continued it right across, but then it's a readability issue. And it's actually kind of natural because we're sort of dividing right at that point as well. So we kind of get that. The only thing I would have suggested in my own code, I would have tended to declare all of these variables as shorter variable names up at the beginning. And then when we see the equations, they sort of pop right out. Here, you have to be patient in reading to understand what's happening, what kind of calculation is going. It's actually just one item divided by another item there, even though it looks like a whole bunch of stuff.
I'm just amazed that I understand what that says.
It's pretty amazing how quickly we can start to make progress. And that's what I found with FRC. Having some kind of goal, like this cooperation, the reason for it was to give us this goal to work towards. And so we failed to notice that we're learning a lot of stuff along the way. And so I really find that an amazing part of the learning process. And my FRC students, compared to my not so FRC students in my computers class, there's no comparison. The amount that they learn in one semester is far more in the ones who have chosen to participate in FRC as part of their class. So there we go. We've determined the current cost per item for that team, or for this particular team. And then we're comparing it to another team. It's the very next team in order, and going around to 0 if we go past 6. So for some reason, we're picking a random person who is playing the game, and it's the very next one in the counting numbers or the index number. And then they're doing another calculation here similarly. And we've got sold more DEC. I'm not sure exactly what we mean by DEC, as it's not commented here, but there's a combination, or sorry, a calculation. It's interesting, some kind of ratio of the number of customers divided by the price difference. The difference in number of customers divided by the price difference. And then an interesting calculation that incorporates that sold more deck. So not quite sure what the sold default and the sold more deck, but it's definitely some kind of calculation. And right down at the end, there are some more interesting decisions. There's an if the optimum price, I'm not sure if it's less than 0 or if it's greater than 0, then some things are happening. Wow, there's a lot happening in here. So if anyone would like to comment, please feel free. And if not, we will sort of continue on. We can just appreciate that they're doing some kind of mathematical calculation that incorporates one more player's prices, and then making a few decisions about that and returning very low or very high prices as a result. So there are 3 possibilities: either a very low price, a very high price, or the optimum price, which I'm calling optimum. I'm not sure if that's what they meant.
I think they have, like, if it tests outside the limits, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if it reaches the 0 or 100 endpoints, then they will set very low or very high.
Excellent. That kind of makes sense, because if it's greater than 100, then we do that calculation here. Or what is it? Oh yeah, profit at 0 is greater than profit at 100. We're actually checking the projected profit. I see here, they're actually making a slope. They're assuming a linear relationship between the profit of the various prices, as they've calculated a slope here for the customers versus the game details. Sorry, the customers versus the prices. And then using that relationship, predicting how much profit is going to come out at a certain price, and then optimizing. So I think this is some kind of optimization of price indeed. And then checking the endpoints if it's out of the domain. That's right. So a most interesting sort of strategy, and that's team 6854.
Good job, team 6854.
Excellent.
That's
Most
really
interesting.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And, I'm actually very much interested in seeing how it will work, because when I tested it, I know everyone's code was there, but I forgot which order they were in there. So I really don't know who's going to win yet. Okay, we can go on to team 6865. And if anyone would like
That's us.
Excellent. And that's Yana.
Yeah.
So,
With lots of help from William, because I speak English. I don't speak Java very well. So
well, moving along.
I tried. You could see my comments as I tried to figure things out and questions. And I tried to comment out lots of things. There's some things that are in there that I apparently never used. Yes, because
they may have been left over from previous.
Yeah, maybe from before. Yeah, from the base. So I was trying out switches with my code because my strategy was very round dependent, and I had I wanted to have different strategies depending on what round it was. So I had to set a whole bunch of array lists access because I wanted to figure out the expenses, or no, I wanted to figure out the cost per unit. So I tried very hard to figure out what the cost per unit was, and that really figured prominently in my strategy, is that based on the number of customers, and then based on the revenue, that I could figure out what the expenses were, and then figure out what the cost per unit was, because that wasn't given to us. So, and then based on my cost per unit, I wanted to make sure I didn't lose money, and that I made money if possible. So that was my kind of strategy. So up front, I had no idea what our cost per unit was, so I just randomly picked 20 based on, some of you'll appreciate this, the fact that we were lowballed in our test game. I figured I may as well go low, knowing my competitors like to lowball. So that was my first case. I just set it to 20. And then from that, I figured out what the cost per unit might be. And then I added 5 to that. So if our cost per unit is very low, my price is going to be very low, but I'm going to make $5 per unit above my cost, and hopefully get lots of customers that way. And then in my third case, so that was that'll be in round 3. Hold on, I'm going down to find out what I had there. In round 3, I was thinking like getting checking my competitors' prices and going $1 below them to try to steal their customers. And I did that. So changing my price to hopefully $1 below the lowest price set by my competitors, but only if it was more than my cost per unit. Otherwise, I didn't want to lose my cost per unit. So I wanted to make sure I didn't lose money from expenses. Ryan's asking about how did I figure out the cost per unit. So I did that in the previous, I did that up in the declaration. My float cost per unit is equal to the last revenue of my index minus my last expenses in my index divided by the last customers in my index.
I just realized there is one little detail. We may want to put this in brackets.
Oh, sure. I don't know that. Like the price of each sweatshirt or whatever widget we're selling.
That's the net revenue. And then I'm assuming you want to both divide the net revenue by the customers, because as it was, it just took the revenue and divided.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, sure. I didn't know that. That's cool. And do I have to put brackets around last customers .get my index too?
Let's see here. Where is last customers? Is that up here as well?
At the very last,
It's up
it's
here.
a division sign.
So last customers was just a direct read from the.
Okay, so that's okay then? You don't need the brackets around it down below?
I don't think so, because you have it here. Yeah, it should be fine.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's just reading. Okay, so that was, that's my thought there. And then in my round 4, I basically did the same thing, but I gave myself a bit more of a profit margin. If repeating that, I would set $1 below the lowest competitor price, or if that's going to be less than my cost per unit, then raise my rate, set my price to the cost per unit plus 3. So I just raised it a bit. I think that's what I did anyway. Hope, yeah. We'll see. Like I said, it might just return 50 because my default is that. And then when we got down to my round 5, I just decided to go. I wanted to try some new codes, so I tried to find the average of competitor prices in round 4, and then go $1 higher. And then my I had a test in there to try to make sure that it didn't go outside the limits. And if it did, to return 99.99, which would that override your default, William?
I think once you've returned, then nothing else will work. If you reach a return, then anything after it won't execute.
Yeah. Okay. Even though does it matter that your limit tester is up at the top of your code?
So my limit tester actually is called in the middle of the code, and I'll show where it's done. When we get down there, you'll actually
Okay.
see where the limit tester comes in.
Okay, and then my default was just to return 50 if none of those cases were used. If everything goes haywire, then my code's just going to return 50.
Excellent.
So we'll see.
Okay.
I believe,
Hey,
Yana,
it looks like code, doesn't it? I'm so proud of it. It's my first time ever writing code.
Excellent. It's very exciting to have that happening. Oh, there was a
Donna?
question.
don't you need to like write like the actual like default and then like the colon in order to like return the 50, or no?
It should be, yes, default. Interestingly though, because without the case, like we assume that all the cases execute, if none of them return anything, then it will still do this. This is kind of outside the case statement. If we want to put a default, we probably put it just inside the case statement here.
Okay. So basically the
it's kind of like a safety net.
So basically the return safety net is basically like a default statement.
Yeah,
that's what I was hoping. So I would at least have some pricing.
So we'll watch your prices and see if any of them return as 50 as we go through to see what happens. So that's really great. Thank you, Yana. It was really great to work back and forth and generate the code. And yeah, it's a really great learning process for me as well, just how to set up a game like this. And now I'm thinking about, okay, in the future, how to better organize the code. And yeah, as I was saying, I was thinking of submitting entire classes instead of just a method next time. So that brings us to strategy 2324. And if there's anyone here who'd like to comment on their strategy, please feel most welcome. An interesting question. I'm just, what is a unit? A cost per unit is, a unit is one sale. In this case, our scenario is selling a team sweater. So one sale of a team sweater is a unit. And the price per unit is the average price per unit, or I guess the price is kind of an, it's a little bit ambiguous. The price could be your price.
I was thinking the cost, how much it costs, how much is my expenses per unit? This would have been what I should have called it, expenses per unit.
So for an external person, the price is the price of the sweater. For the internal business person, the price is how much you paid in expenses for that. So that price is
my overhead.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, so if I don't sell that sweater, how much would I lose?
Yeah, and that could be it, yeah. Oh, excellent. 20th anniversary for 865. Congratulations. Wow, time is moving quickly, isn't it? All right, so let's just take a look at strategy 2324. And we have some previous profits. And we generate my index, and then we get the last profits from my index. And then we have the last prices and my price. So we've done a little calculation here. Now, this is one example where I actually made one slight modification here. And hopefully, because this is just a fun game, I'll show why I did this, because it actually doesn't work if we do this. So we can take all the results this evening with a grain of salt. It's not really about whether the programs worked perfectly. It's actually whether or not we're getting learning opportunities from them. And here's one thing, the code is really immaculately, very nicely done. One part of it did not work. And for this reason, I actually put one line of the code way up at the top here. And which one is it? It's somewhere in here. This one, highest prices. Okay, there's a reason for that. And let's go back down to 2324's strategy. Highest prices was being declared right here. And it depends on the previous highest prices, except in round one, they don't exist. So this code was producing an error here. But by defining highest prices at the top, then when we come to this one, it started working. So anyway, that was my change in modification.
What is math.abs?
Let me see here, math.abs. The absolute value is a quantity without the negative sign. So those are some interesting functions. You'll have lots of functions in the math library, and that's one of them. So we return a price that's at least positive. We don't have negative prices like in our financial world. We were having negative interest rates on a few things. That's no good. So it's whatever is the average price minus 10, we'd return the absolute value. It's kind of like a cushion for if the average price is kind of low. Most interesting. And this is kind of similar to what Yana was just explaining. It's a kind of a potpourri strategy. The first price is $45.99. Then we do some calculations on the previous profits and find the highest prices and return the average price according to this calculation minus 10. And then case 3, we're doing something similar and so on. So there are 5 different cases, and we'll make this code available and everyone can sort of leaf through it. But we're making some kind of calculation based on the previous prices, the highest prices, the average prices, and then choosing accordingly. And the default is $45.99 if nothing else works. All right, well, that's a review of our code. And strategy 1, 2, 3, 4 was, I believe, is that actually one of our teams here? I think this is a sample. Yeah, this is the sample code that we did a few weeks ago. So I'm not going to put that in the game. And strategy random. This is an important one. This is one that just gives a random number. So we have 3 entrants in our game. And so here are the 3 entrants. For player 0 is 68.65, player 1 is 23.24, and player 2 is 68.54. I'm just going to write those down because I'm going to kind of manually enter them in our game board when we begin playing. And the 3 final contestants are going to be random bots. You'll see here that everyone's prices are validated. Whoops, I don't know where that came from. Okay, so there's a validate of the strategy of the current game details. So we send the current game details to the strategy returns a float, the validate takes a float and makes sure that it's valid. If it's lower than 0, it returns a 0.01. If it's higher than 100, it returns a 99.99.
That answers my earlier question. So in Java, the linear from top to bottom does matter. It's like what happens at the end happens after all the other stuff. It's
yes.
Not like it's some kind of weird parallel computing thing.
Yeah, it's all going through everything in order, basically. And if we look at this
can you tell me why, can you explain just before we launch it, why the switches in that last, why did you choose to use switches there?
Right here? Oh, down here. Okay.
Yeah. Like,
I was using a switch. So down
just
here,
because we inspired you to use switches.
It could be. I can't remember when I put the switch in really, because this was part of the, like when I'm doing a strategy, I'm going to be getting an incoming index, which is the player index. So if it's player 0, then we have to call this specific strategy and so on, case 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I may have had that switch in before because I knew I had to do something like that. So
you don't have to select anything. It just automatically, because of the int I, will pull whichever matching index in.
All I had to do
because
is
you're basically getting an.
Yeah, I replaced the random with a team number here, more or less.
And is there an array somewhere being returned at the top of the autonomous that's pulling all these cases?
So let's follow
of the strategy
through. Like if I go back to my game model, The game model is like holding the game together. So here is the turn. When we click on a button, which is play, when we click on the play button, it's linked to the turn method inside this GPCG model. We grab the current game details and send it off to a new current game details. This is where it's packaged up. It's like we're shipping it from headquarters right here. And there's where current game details gets sent off to your methods. And we set the round, the total, and so on, so on, so on. And let's look here.
And then down below, yeah, I was just looking at the array list float. Bot prices equals new array list float.
So this is where it is here. If we're using bot players, then we're going to call the autonomous command right here. And we add the set of bot prices here and package that into the game details. And then set the prices accordingly. And now, where are we sending it there? Oh, there it is. Where there's the strategy. We're adding the strategy for player 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're basically getting the price set by each player right here. This is where the bots are calling the autoplay.
So we're sort of bots too, because we're autonomous as well.
Yeah, all of us are bots in this case. Otherwise, it's just done manually. And I turn that mode on up here. I have a little bot players equals true. If I want to have it set like we were demonstrating the game before, I just put that as false and we manually enter the prices each time. But because it's true, it gets called into this here and adds the price for each player and sets the prices according to the bot prices.
I love that. I understand it. Thank you.
So it's a kind of a very interesting interplay between various methods and classes going on. So I found this very interesting as well to do this. I'd never done a game particularly with a GUI and with Java like this. So it was good fun. All right, so we will, maybe it's about time to try our game out. So I'm gonna launch the game and rename the players. And if all goes well, we'll play 5 rounds and see where everyone is, and we'll just celebrate a victory for everyone having submitted your code. Again, this is quite a new sort of experience, and I've put enough uncertainty into the game. Unless you're an advanced statistician, I wouldn't take the results of the game too seriously, as there's I'm
going to use mine to predict the stock market.
Yeah, you could do that actually. And yeah, more crazy things have been used to predict the stock market, so you might be onto something. Here we go, and we'll run the game. And let's do some renaming. So player 1 is 6865, or player 0 if you're a computer. And player 2 is 2324. And player 3 is 6854. Can't read my own handwriting. 6854. And we'll call this one bot. 0, 1, 2, 3, and bot 4, and bot 5, as those are the index numbers inside the game. All right, turn is 1 as soon as we press play, actually. So there's a slight discrepancy there. So when it says turn 2, that's at the beginning of turn 2 before the prices have been selected. So when it says turn 6, the game will have been completed. As I haven't built an ending into the game, we're just focusing on how the prices are going. Okay, all right, well, here's our moment for our 3 contestants and our 3 bots. Let's see how the 3 methods selected handle the first round. And just as expected, we have our 20, 45, 99, and 80 representing the prices in the first round. And our leader at the moment looking carefully at the number of digits, $4.6 million of profit goes to 23-24. Not too bad. All the human players, or the human bot players, shall we say, are above zero. So that's a good sign. And it looks like it's about to be round 2. Round 2, the price went down to 7.87 for team 6865. $35.99 was 23-24, and $80 68-64, leaving only one human team in the black, the red, meaning the loss of profits on 2 other teams. So $6 million profit, not too bad after 2 rounds. Let's see how the next round goes. So that was 2 turns. The third turn. Whoa! Now we can tell that is trying to undercut the market. We have a price of 0.01, for which the calculation must have been less than 0. Anyway, the profit is in the order of -5 million for a total of -7 million. Meanwhile, we have some heavy losses for team 23-24. It was pulled down by all the customers moving to the very cheap deals on teams 68-65 and 68-54. Even so, that team lost less than the other human players and is still in first place, even among the bots. Okay, that's 3. The fourth turn. Again, price of 0.01, really pulling that market down. The profits are about to go negative for almost everyone, but holding on is team 23-24, the only human team left positive. And interestingly, one random bot has played the market very wisely somehow and is $2.5 million up after 4 rounds. And our final round is about to go now. And let's see what happens. Whoa! The price is now no longer 0.001 for 68-65. The profit went way up for all the human teams. However, the one that held on the longest, and in fact beat all the teams, 23-24. Congratulations to all our players. And that was a most interesting automatic, sort of an autonomous competition. And hopefully that can represent some opportunities for us to explore other ways to do autonomous competition. So again, teams 23-24, 68-65, and 68-54, congratulations to everyone for having run an autonomous routine in our little cooperation. And our sharing of each other's code is, of course, the opportunity to make it into a cooperation, just to see how everyone's thinking was translating to profits here and there. You'll see that 23-24 had rather moderate prices, whereas the other 2 teams had rather extreme prices, and moderation is favored in this game. And I'm sure bot 3, if we looked back in the prices, I'm sure we would find that bot 3 was relatively moderate. That's my theory anyway. So again, thank you very much to everyone who participated in our cooperation. All right, I'm going to maybe switch gears here and go back to our slideshow. We just ran the program and the analysis of the results. We had a little bit of a discussion of that. And there are lots of interesting dynamics about this game. And we also showed earlier that it is indeed a cooperation if there was some way for the bots to communicate and agree with each other, and that they could trust each other, then they could just set all the prices to very high and everyone would be a winner. So that's one of the things about the game. We also saw with the choosing of very low prices, cut the bottom out of the market and made profitability a thing of the past for the teams. And I think everyone will be thankful that I set the difficulty low, as that made some of the teams profitable in the end. So any other comments, please feel free to comment verbally or in chat. The most interesting sort of thing here. So the next item that I had thought of working with us, something like planning autonomous routines. We can look at the robot simulator sort of code from last time and start to think about how can a team plan some particular routes with autonomous routines. And well, the first thing is the code in the robot simulator is set out like some Cartesian coordinates, X and Y. And last time we saw how those coordinates could generate various pathways. And just to demonstrate that, I'm going to switch gears on our code here and open up our autonomous or our robot simulator. Drive simulator. I wonder if it's drive simulator 4 or 3 that I had working. I'll try drive simulator 3. Oh, there are some comments coming out here. So well done for everyone. To make everyone's prices 99.99 except mine. That is a good point. And there is probably an optimum price below 99.99 that would get you a lot of profit in that regard. Yes, and the thing is, you would have to know what every other company was doing. So that is a good point, David. If you only knew that, you could set your price accordingly. And that's the thing, it can't look at the current round because the decisions are made as soon as we click the button. They're all made at more or less the same time. They are made in order, of course, but in a very short amount of time with no cross-reference to the other prices. When we play the game live in a classroom, you do see by about the 3rd or 4th round, teams are creatively trying to listen or otherwise find out about the plans of the other teams. But in a computer program that's kind of limited like this, that's not as easy.
It seems, looking at as the rounds went by, it seemed that in the 3rd and 4th round, the calculation didn't work. It shouldn't have ever returned 0.01 in my case, because I think something went wrong. If my code had worked, the lowest it could have gone would have been the cost per unit plus whatever.
Interesting. So that would be a cause for reflection. And often it's something as simple as a bracket, as we saw there. That maybe
that's what I'm imagining. It's just interesting to see to watch it in slow motion and figure it out. It would be also fun in a future iteration is to let people go change it and try it again.
Exactly. I'd love to try the game again because now everyone kind of knows how it works. And if anyone would like to participate again, I'm sure we could run this because it would actually help us to create some interesting learning opportunities. And the next one I'm suggesting is something like a robot dance recital, in that we could use a simulator to try out different approaches of the robots to do tasks, kind of like the FTC sim, but using the integrated simulator that comes with the WPI lib. Now, there are a few things. Do we have the file for the game? Yes. And what I'll do now, I'm going to update it to the internet. If we just cancel this for one moment here, this code here, I can update it to the internet. 3 strategies.
William, someone was asking about just reviewing again how to upload and how to post stuff to GitHub and connect our GitHub to it.
Sure. Like here, I'm going to show the process. Like once I've changed the code, like for example, this afternoon, I put the 3 strategies into the game and tested them all. So I'm just putting a little message about that, and I'll commit it with this check mark, and then we will push. Now that's the simple part. The complicated part is actually getting that hooked up to GitHub. And there are a few online tutorials about that, and we can maybe try that again just to go through the process of how you would do that. I'm going to pull up my GitHub account.
We tried it with our robot, last year's robot, and trying to play around with GitHub in our code. And we ended up giving up and just using the HTTPS download.
There is, there is a kind of a barrier to overcome, and it's perhaps here. If I go to my graciously professional game, graciously professional cooperation game, and I'm just going to check that the code did update 1 minute ago. Yes, the code looks like it did update, and
strategies included.
Yeah, so now the strategies are there.
And you commented that comment, 3 strategies included, you set that before you committed, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that came up here. But the whole trick to it is the security. It used to be a lot easier about 10 years ago, and gradually GitHub has become more unwieldy in terms of just casually signing up. You have to do a little bit of configuration of the security. And let's see here if it's under the settings. And it should be under something like the keys. Okay, is it the SSH key or is it another one? It used to be just keys, but there was something else here, like a token that I had to generate this time. Okay, so in the case here, when we're not quite sure, this is what I usually do. Configure VS Code to upload to GitHub. So their suggestion is you can follow the publish to GitHub kind of approach. So maybe we'll try that. I'm going to try a new, maybe I can make a new simulator and answer a few questions at the same time. Because in the chat, there was also a question about how to make a new simulator file. And Ryan has a very good point. There's a lot of hackers and there's lots of bots. Imagine like in a few weeks, we made a few bots that played a game automatically. Well, in the last 20 to 30 years, people have been making bots to surf the internet and hack into your code automatically. And so that's why it's a lot more secure now. And oh, that's a good comment. It is good to try to make the game break itself. And I enjoy that, yeah, because that will create some learning. Now, there were a few questions. How do we make a hot, or what is the hotkey for creating a project? And then there was a question about what robot template can you simulate? And then the question about GitHub. So let's do all of that at once. I'm going to create a new simulator template file and then try to put it up on GitHub. All right, let's see what that looks like. So the hotkey then is Control and Shift and then P. And we're going to create a new project. And the project type again is going to be an example. And it will be Java. Lots of examples here, but I'm going to go down to the simple differential drive simulation. And the base folder, we'll put that here under Java. Select this folder. And the project name will be something like Simulator 6 or something. I think I have Simulator 5 in another folder, so I'm just going to call this Simulator 6. And the team number, it's my team number. Enable desktop support, that's important because we're doing a simulator and we'll generate the project. And we'll open it in the current window. There we go. And we should be able to see the source. Okay, and there's the basic simulator. Now, let's say that this was a robot.
William, just
Yeah.
pause for, can you pause and just, what version of Visual Studio Code are you running?
Let's find out here. We'll go to help and about. It says version 1.52.1.
I think she's talking about like what year, right?
That could be, there's several layers to it because the Visual Studio Code is one part of it. And then the WPI lib, as far as I know, is the most recent, but I'm not sure unless I neglected to update it recently. I think it's the most recently available WPI lib version.
They did release the 2022 version.
They have, right?
Yeah.
Now, I can check which one.
Can you update WPI lib without uninstalling and starting over with the VS Code?
I believe so. But let's see here. There may be a way to do that here. Update WPI lib, check for WPI lib updates, check online, and no WPI lib update found. So maybe if you don't have the most recent one, you can do that same thing here, the command palette, and check for updates. I believe I did that a few weeks ago and it worked. So that would not require you to start over with VS Code, but I can see where that question could come because this is a special version of VS Code that comes configured with the WPI lib. So. But once you have it, you should be able to update it from the WPI lib repository. So hopefully that will work. Let's see if we can publish this directly to GitHub and see what it will say for us. Publish to GitHub will allow. And we're authorizing Visual Studio Code to access GitHub. Continue. Now here's the authorization token. And here are the instructions. So I'm copying this token. I'm going to switch back to VS Code and then click signing into GitHub in the status bar and paste the token and hit enter. So let's try that. Signing into GitHub on the status bar, click it, and then I'm pasting the token and then press enter. And if all is well, then that should be okay. Now it's signing into github.com. At this point, I'm not entirely sure it's going to just work. And I remember having to do one or two more things. And that's why it's not quite so straightforward. I may have had to do some other things to get it working. In my last 5 or 6 years of class, GitHub has been, oh, there, that's interesting. Oh, no, that's fine. GitHub has been one of the most challenging things to get working. And I recall having this exact process happen a few weeks ago, and I had to go and do a little research as to why is it kind of, it's stalling on this step. So I'll show the process I went through. I started going through Stack Overflow like this, Git or VS Code. Something like this. VS Code stalls on signing, stuck on sign in after signing in with GitHub account. And I did have to leaf through a fair number of articles before I found out why it's not working. Oh, maybe it's particular to my Linux, I don't know. And as you see, I'm kind of leafing through here and quickly reading through other people's experiences. And this is how I would try this. So with everyone at home, maybe you might try it on your computers and see if it gets past this point. Now you'll see I'm also already signed into GitHub here. And hopefully that is to my favor at the moment, but it should still just be working there. Interesting now. The second time I did that, I pressed a few buttons. I'm not sure if this is going to work. Testing 1, 2, 3. It looks like the issue kind of resolved when I just started clicking things. That often happens with GitHub with pushes and pulls. I just modified the changes and let's see if we can push. So now we have to configure a remote. So we're going to provide a repository URL or pick a remote. Oh no, I have to set that up first.
What you need to do is that you actually need to open up a new repository on GitHub before you can publish it.
That's it. Okay, so that's what I would do. I'll go back here.
Because if there's no repository, then it would make sense for the thing to give you an error code.
I'm seeing there, I was assuming it was going to help me to actually establish one. And in this case, it didn't seem to do that. So if that were the case, I might have to sew together a repository with the code that I have there, and that could be an issue. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do this here because it could take me a few minutes, but what I will do is if anyone would like to have some special time afterwards, like at 8:30 to do that, we can try that again because it could take us down an unforeseen set of challenges. Just doing it live like this, it does sometimes take a good amount of time. The short message is you're going to have to be patient with GitHub. It's one of the most challenging things to get over, but one of the most rewarding things to get set up correctly for your team. And I'd be very happy to help you troubleshoot. Last 5 years of my classes have been troubleshooting GitHub in one way or another. And so that would be very good for us to work together to make sure each team feels supported with GitHub. Okay, so yeah, I'll reserve that for 8:30 just in case that takes us a little too much time. And I'm going to go back to our simulator and then at least go through that idea, and then we can come back to our GitHub. So here is our robot simulator. And we will now just try simulating it, Control and Shift and P again. And we should now simulate the robot code on the desktop.
William, this is not the one from last time. This is like the brand new one. So
yeah,
so you will not have like the ability to move up and down.
Yeah, actually, I figured that one out, and we should be able to do that right live right now. Well, let's see.
I think you picked like the wrong file to like simulate. That's like what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see how far I can get, and then we can maybe backtrack to my other file. So I just put up the simulator. I'm going to put up the field, and it's not going to have a field in there. And there's my field, and the robot's on the very edge of the field. Now, the way that the default is structured, there are actually 2 game controllers. So I'm going to put keyboard 0 on joystick 0 here, and keyboard 1 on joystick 1. And let's just see which ones are which. Okay. I'm seeing that the J and K and anyway, the J and K and L keys all have some kind of effect. Oh yeah, and the I, J, K, L, and I. So that's the one. And then the other one is W, A, S, and D. Good, so I'm getting the imaginary controllers working. Now when I press teleoperated, it should be able to now drive. Oh yeah, and there was one more thing I had to do. I have to actually change the game controller in here. I'm just leaving through for our Xbox controller. And here it is. Speed and rotation. I'm going to just put this on the left like we did last time because it seems to just work. Good, and now I'll just try simulating it again. I'll turn off this simulation and redeploy it. Control Shift P, simulate the robot code on the desktop. And those 2 keyboards are now linked in as virtual controllers. So I should be able to just go to teleop periodic. There, and it's working now. So if we go back into the code, I don't know why I had to change this to the left and it just works. So if anyone has any insight as to how to get it working with the right, the default one, you can let me know. And thank you for that tip. I forgot that it doesn't work out of the box. Okay, so this seems to be working, and we can do all kinds of things with this as we did last time to incorporate other things into our code. The one thing I wanted to do is to just discuss, well, how would we start adding some other things into our code? And we'll use this one as an example, but we could actually start from a basic robot system. So maybe it would be better instead of this, I'm just trying to think what would be
Is that a timed robot that you're simulating?
Yes,
now?
I'm actually simulating, let's see if this is, I believe, yeah, this is a timed robot as it's all in the same directory, and we're not seeing the subdirectories like commands and subsystems. So it's a timed robot. So that would be a challenge. Can you kind of take the code from the simulator, find out which is particular to the simulator, and incorporate it into the command-based robot? Well, that would be a nice challenge to get going. It will take some careful reading of the code and finding out which of these libraries you'd need to include, and then where you would have to put these kind of variables to get that all working. So that's an interesting challenge project. One thing we could do is to try to incorporate a virtual switch or something like that, or an imaginary motor, for example. So I think maybe the motor is a good idea, as we might be able to link it to the virtual game controller. All right, well, what do we already have here? Do we have any motors? Timed robot, yes. We just are somehow simulating the motors here. Well, I'm going to actually just put a pretend actual motor in there. I'm wondering if they come with it, or we have to actually, maybe I actually have to download those. Oh, there's a Talon.
What are you talking about? Like which motor?
Just any motor for the moment. I just brought out a Talon. I don't know if that's a generic Talon. I know on our team we had to download special libraries for the Talon CAN-based Talon, the version of the Talon that runs in the CAN bus. So for this, I'm just like any motor.
Do you want to talk about like how like the vendor depths thing works? So like, and just like give an example of like downloading a motor from another site that is not included in WPI lib.
That would be really good. I had thought of doing that next semester when we do the CAN bus, or I call it next semester, after January starts with the CAN bus, as that kind of goes with that discussion. In short, we download some extra libraries so that we can get a particular version of the Talon, the CAN bus Talon. So I don't know if I'll do that now, because I was going to save that for that discussion in January. I think my point now is just the basic process of loading in a library and then somehow connecting what we're doing with the controller to the action of a motor. So I just added a Talon, and you see it's kind of like it's underlined because it's not being used. So we've imported the library, but now we need an example of the Talon, an instance to be used. So we'll just call it like this. And we can call this spinner motor. I don't know, our robot has some kind of spinner. And we're going to put this on channel 0.
Why is the final statement underlined?
We'll see this in a moment. It may be because it's not being used. Oh, it's float. Float expected. Interesting. Oh, because I forgot to say Talon. There it is. Private final Talon spinner. It's a new Talon.
So right now you're creating like a new Talon object.
Yes. All right, so these motors, the basic Talons and Victors, they have 3 wires coming out of them that are white, black, and red in a tiny little bus that has 3 ends. Not to be confused with the positive and negative wires coming out of each end. The ones that actually do the driving, these are 3 logic wires, and they're of a much smaller diameter, and they plug directly into the Roborio. It would actually be worth it to take a look there. I think I had one in the illustration here. They actually are not shown in this diagram here, but we can take a look at the Roborio. And did I have a Roborio in there? No, I'll just get one online. And we'll just see where they plug into our Roborio. Wonder if any of them has an image of those wires. Oh, there's a nice example. Okay, and this is an example here. There's the PWM channels, pulse width modulation. And there's a kind of a code language with the length or the percentage of the time that the code is on or off, or the electricity is on and off in this little channel corresponds to the power of the motor. And each of these lines will go to some kind of actuator, quite possibly a Talon or a Victor or a Spark kind of motor controller. So I'm assuming for this, I'm plugging it into channel 0 of the PWM. And we may even be able to see that. Oh, it's a YouTube, so I don't want to play it. But if we were to have a little bit more resolution there, we could actually clearly see which one is 0 and which one is 9. And so every motor controller or every device that you define is somehow going to hook into one of these channels. There's the CAN bus that can have multiple devices hooked into one little place. And here are the pulse width modulation buses for motor controllers and servos. And these ones, the digital I/O, are really great for sensors, such as limit switches. And we just plug them in. Be very careful, because if you get the plugins wrong, you can short out things and cause issues, shall we say. All right, that's what I'm imagining doing. I took a single Talon motor controller, and I can imagine it hooked through the logical or the pulse width modulation into one of the channels here, channel 0. And then it's hooked up to some motor on the robot. And I called that motor something to do with what's happening on my robot. In this case, I'm imagining something's going to spin around. It's a spinner. Okay. Now we can have some logic to determine what's going to happen with this spinner. So it's going to happen when the robot is in the tele-op periodic. All right. And right now, the tele-op periodic is determining the speed and the rotation, and then driving accordingly. And that's from the controller. Well, I can do some other things. For example, I can say this. I want to know if, for example, if, and it's from my M controller. Oh, I'm going to get raw button. Oh, get a button. Oh, that's good. I'll try that one. Get a button.
What does the .raw button function do?
I use that a lot, or we use that a lot on our team. In fact, I'm just going to do that, get raw button, because I know that works. It just sort of disappeared. I'm familiar with this one. Each button has an index number, and button 0 might be A, button 1 might be B, for example. So I'm just going to say button 1. It's something you may have to find out through trial and error using your driver's station. And well, how do you do that? If you go back to the driving simulator like we had up here, you can see that there are several buttons there on the bottom. And if I press various items on the keyboard, oh yeah, there are my buttons. So that might be on joystick 1, that's button 0 or 1. I can't remember if they start from 0 or 1, and 2 and 3 and 4, for example. Those are the M and comma and period. And on my French keyboard, that's an E accent, accented E. And there are, 4 buttons corresponding to the 4 main buttons on your game controller. There are actually about 8 or 10 of them, if I recall correctly. And there's also some buttons called the POV buttons, which is for the plus sign shaped controller that also is used. It also has about, I think, 8 positions, north, south, east, and west, and then northwest and northeast and so on. So 8 positions it can read in. You'll have to become familiar with this when you get your game controller. And when you run your driver's station with your game controller, you'll see some feedback. When you press a button, it'll let you know when it's being pressed, and that can help you in the programming process. So for right now, I'm just using button 1 because I know that there is a button 1. Okay, so if M controller and get raw button 1, now I'm forgetting if that's equal to true or to, does it let me do that? Is it true? Seems to like that. Good. So that means it's pressed. Then I'm going to say spinner dot set. I'm going to set it to 100%. And else. This is an important one because if you don't do an else, it'll just keep spinning. There we are. It's either going to go 100% forward or just set back to 0.
Won't you use like the set speed command instead of the set, or no?
Oh, pardon? Set speed?
Yeah, I believe like the spinner had a set speed command on it. Or would you not do that?
I think, let's just go back here. Now, they've defined a whole bunch of things here for the simulator, but when I defined this spinner up here, I just said it's a new Talon on channel 0. So I didn't have any set speed or any other things. It's very simple. And as a Talon, it has a set that can be between -1 for backwards 100% and a +1 for forwards 100%. And so in this case, I'm just using the set method. So if the button is pressed, full speed ahead. Actually, if we're spinning, full speed around. And if not, set it to 0. Stop spinning, in other words. And this is one simple example of how we can add a component onto our robot. And once you've got a template, say you go with the timed robot, that's all you're going to do. You go up to the top here and you say, we want a new motor. What kind is it? Oh, it's a Spark. Okay, maybe you have to download the vendor dependencies for the Spark or the CAN-based motor or something like that. Or maybe it just already comes with the library. So you declare that library up here. It's going to be used, the Talon library. And then you make an instance of the Talon, remembering, I do this all the time. I always forget to say a Talon. Java is really repetitive. Timer. Ramsey controller. It's just repeating itself. So I always forget that. And so I've declared a particular variable that's linked to a hardware component on my Roborio, channel 0 of the PWM, and it's called spinner. And then in my, for example, here I'm doing tele-op periodic. I'm reading the game controller button, and if I've got some kind of button, like button 1 pressed, if it's true, then I'm going to set the spinner to 1, and otherwise I can set it to 0. And that's a very simple command. You can do much more sophisticated things. And for example, you don't have to connect it to a button. You can read an axis. So for example, here, the get x-axis is a number between -1 and 1. And then you can get really granular control over the speed or rotation in this case. So you can be going part of the speed or full speed or anything in between as you move your game controller. So that's the difference between some things like axes that have multiple possible values, or buttons that are either true or false.
With the axes, is that where your encoder comes in?
And now the axes, we have to distinguish between the axis on a controller and perhaps the axle or axis.
Right, I am confusing the two, yes. So
And,
the axes.
that's why I was not going to do a controller, or sorry, an encoder with this example. I just wanted to, I'm just not sure how to demonstrate it. I'd love to have a real robot. I want to try a few times with the virtual controller, with the virtual encoder before I try it here. I knew that we could get this basic one working, and it's a good place to start. Connecting a button to a motor is a really great place to start because it'll get you far with some basic robot functioning. And we'll work on things like encoders and switches as we go.
So if you press, like in the simulator now, if you press the button,
it's going to set
will
an
it spin?
imaginary spinner. That's the thing. We have an imaginary.
Oh, it won't actually start spinning.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if this will be allowed. We'll try printing that and see if it actually allows us with a system out print line, and we should see it here if that's the
So we
case.
can see it worked.
Yeah, so let's try that, and that would be a nice conclusion to our work. We'll maybe close the other simulator and try another one. Simulate robot. Oh, the only problem is I forgot which button is which. But let's just go tele-op periodic and see if I can find. There, I'm moving my robot around. I have to find those buttons now. Oh, spinning. The thing is, it didn't stop. Oh, it's not. We can't actually tell when it's spinning or not spinning unless I copy this down here so it's clear that it's not spinning. Try that one more time. See if we can see a difference between not spinning and spinning now. We put it into teleoperated and it's not spinning. As soon as I touch my button 0, or button 1 rather, spinning. And in my case, it's Z. So we're spinning, now we're not spinning, spinning. So you can see a lot of things happening. You can fully test your robot if you have a good imagination and know that your spinner is spinning and it's not spinning, and see if it behaves according to what you think before you actually try it with real hardware. Great.
Can you try a different button, like
Sure.
move it to the left or right and see if it does not spinning or spinning?
Sure, like with putting another button in there. Let's see what.
No, just like try moving the robot without the spinner being.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it'll be moving around here. Oops. I just made it move. It's gone. I don't know which direction it is. I think I lost the robot. Oh, it was just there. Oh no. There it is. Okay, found it. So I can move it around and I can be spinning and not spinning as I'm moving it.
Cool.
So there. And then you can see that things happen simultaneously. It goes through each of your logical things several times a second, something like 100 times a second. And it makes this decision. Oh, what is our speed? What is our rotation? Okay, set the drive motors accordingly. And then it does the same thing with spinning or not spinning.
So if it outputs correctly, you know your code ran through
Yeah,
with at least it ran. You don't know if it had the right effect because you can't see it.
we at
That's
least
very
know that the motor will be working. Now, is the motor hooked up to the right gear ratio and has the right physical mechanism to do what you thought it should do? That's another story, but at least you can know up to the level of the motor working, whether it's working as planned or not.
William, did your team ever try a 3D simulation with like a CAD robot?
We never got into simulation with the team. We did actually do some robot simulation of climbing, and we developed our own simulation software in Python to test out climbing mechanisms, because we recognized that from our first year that the subtleties of the gear ratios were much more important than we had realized. And so we put a lot of effort into that in our second year and came up with a program that you could put in gear ratios for several stages, 2 planetary stages and up to 3 or 4 dog gear kind of stages, and come up with a gear ratio, input that data in, and then have a graphical representation of the climbing, showing the ones that were faster or slower. And we used to have little competitions to figure out good combination of gear ratios to put into the simulator. And then we later used some mathematical combinations and permutations to identify the best available gear ratios based on the hardware we had. And but we didn't try it on any of the official simulators or this simulator. But that's definitely something we could develop, and we probably still have the code on GitLab somewhere, and be very glad to share that. We could further develop that climbing simulator, for example, and maybe develop some similar simulators that relate gears to projected behavior. So I think that's a great place to stop, unless there are some who may like to stay around for some playing around with GitLab. So what I will do now, for anyone who would like to stay, I'm going to try to put this on GitLab now. And I
have a question.
Sure.
So like when I was like creating like the simple differential drive on my computer, the code that it gave me as a default code was much different than yours.
Ah, well, this one is a simulator. And if we go back and make another one, just a basic differential drive, I think we'll find it's quite distinct. And now let's see if I have one. Yeah, timed robot 2, for example. If I open timed robot 2, we're going to see just a basic timed robot. And what do they have here? They don't even have any motors, do they? Very, very basic motors. Yeah, nothing is even included in.
Like, can I show you like the code that
Sure.
like basically I did the exact, like I pressed like the exact same buttons as you did.
Okay.
And for some reason, like the code that I got was like much different. So like if
Whoa, so that's a timed, is that a timed robot? Yes.
it is a timed robot.
Is there a possibility that that's a simulator? A simulated timed robot?
I'm just gonna show you like what I did. Like,
okay,
I pressed here, you pressed it.
Oh, you're using example. Yeah, I did the one down here.
Did you use like a template or
yes,
or
template.
no?
Try the Java template and then just timed robot.
Like I'm talking about like the one that you just created, the simulator.
Oh, okay. The one I just created, we go back to Java, and it's an example, and there's a really long name. It's something like simulated timed robot. It's way down.
Which one is it, right?
Yeah, that's it. Simple differential drive simulation.
Yeah, that's exactly like what I pressed. Let's see. And then I'll just.
Oh yeah, you put on a folder.
Folder.
And then
simple drive 1.
Good, 865. And generate project. Yes. Down into the source.
Java robot.
Wow, yes, you've got a fair amount there.
And like the thing that I'm most confused with is this statement. Because with this statement,
Yes.
you got something completely different.
Well, what I overrode that. I changed the get right to the get left, I believe. Oh, that's right. Let me just check mine.
Because yours was like much different, was so much different.
I'm just going back to this folder here for the drive simulator. Whoa, oops.
Might that have something to do with the version or the fact that William's on a Linux machine or I'm on a Mac? Would that
It could
change
be the
anything?
version of WPI-lib that I'm using.
Yeah,
That could be it. Do you have the updated one?
Like I downloaded like the 2022 like beta version, I believe.
Oh, if it's beta, maybe mine doesn't automatically go to beta. Maybe I'm just on the alpha version, or not alpha. Maybe I'm just on the stable version. So it could be that
the
they've updated
2021
these things.
stable.
And
I tried updating mine and it said there was no updates, but I know I don't have the 2022.
and that's something we'll have to be very careful with as a community, because if you use code, like say you use my last year's code and then they change the API, it's going to be a difficulty. So
Yeah.
we will have to make some updates, and usually they'll probably make this stable by the time we have our kickoff, or sometime shortly.
Are they, why, I know this is like philosophical, but why wouldn't it be backward compatible? Like I have our old robot in our shop. I want it to be operational for our drive team for the practice. Why can't, if I don't want to have 2 computers? You're laughing, why?
I would love to know that too.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I've had that problem happen, and I was working on things with our students. We'd be, well, why is this not working? And then we realize that there's a discrepancy between 2 years of code base.
You could see on David's machine, it says, I think that's David. It says, see users public WPI lib 2022 in the terminal. You can see it in the terminal.
So I definitely, yeah, that's a 2022. I wonder if in my machine, if it's saying that. Interesting. I'm just taking a look at the commands. Oh, hard to find out which or where it is here.
It should be in the terminal. Like the very first message, like when you run your program.
Yeah. So yours says M double X speed, and mine says double X speed negative M speed limiter dot calculate M controller dot get Y. Oh yeah, get left Y instead of generic hand K left. Whoa, they've changed the API. It's so when I run it, I wonder if it's going to let me run it now.
Because right now it would be more complex, like in my version, it would be more complex to get it running both horizontally and vertically. So compared to yours, I believe.
Yours, I would just guess that you just get left X down on line 78. On line 78, just change that to get left X and it should work. Capital X, yeah.
And I wonder why it's not. I wonder why you do not use like Y to like turn like up and down, and I wonder why you use X.
I think there are some teams that use 2 controllers, one for speed and one for direction. And
yeah,
that's maybe a quite a classic way of doing it, but every team that I've ever been on, we've just used a single controller to do all of that.
Our team, we use 2 different controllers. One is the one is the operator's controller, and one of them is the
Driver.
driver's controller.
That actually makes a lot of sense, and then you can cooperate, but you have to be very
Yeah.
coordinated.
Yeah.
We tried that a few times in testing, but we ended up in competition. We just made it one person because it was hard to coordinate. However, we did.
Yeah. What is tough is that we have mostly rookies for our drive team here, because it's like our team is like is usually filled with like a lot of like grade 11 to 12. Like,
oh yeah.
So like basically like this year, like we do not want to run into a problem where we won't have like people for drive team in the future, like after like the grade 11 to 12 graduate. So basically we're basically mostly using rookies for drive this year.
Oh, that's familiar to me. Pretty much every year except for one, we had all rookies because we all grade 12s on my team usually.
Yeah.
Oh, that's challenging, but then you can hopefully build up your team a little.
Yeah, like what was like very annoying is that like when our team was like at the best programming wise, that's when COVID happened.
Yes. Oh yeah,
Basically like our programming team was like two very knowledgeable grade 12s in our 2020 year, and one very knowledgeable grade 11.
Nice. Who are now
COVID happened, and then like learning was just completely different in terms of like robot programming.
Oops. Well, now we have a chance to build up again, and
yeah,
that actually happens on the team. So your team's been around for 20 years, and I'm sure it's seen some peaks and lulls over the time.
Yeah. Ironically, the last time we thought we were going to have a rebuilding year, we made it all the way to Worlds.
Oh, not bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a feeling your team number is on this poster here. 865, yes. There's some interesting history to the teams in Canada here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, that's really great. I hope that will work. I wonder if you can try the simulation as it is now.
Simulate robot code.
Yeah. And there it is, both of those. And since you're only sharing one window, maybe it's not going to share the other one, or
I could just like do a reshare.
Okay.
New share, screen, share.
There it is. Okay. And now you can drag a keyboard on there. That's WASD, hopefully. And then network tables and field.
No. It just found it. Oh, smart dashboard field.
There we are. And now teleoperated.
Teleoperated.
And does it turn? Yes, it's turning.
Hey.
Good. Okay. So it seems that it's fine. Now there is a slight difference, and we will have to keep that in mind. So always be ready for changes to the code like we're just pointed out here. And I guess in January, we'll update our WPI lib and we'll work from the new one to get these.
I updated it early. Like since I just got like a brand new computer, like right now, my old one has been around for like 4 years and it was like going into trouble. So I just decided to download like the 2022 version right now.
Nice. Oh, then that will save you later in January.
Yeah.
So there was a question about GitHub, and we could try to get the GitHub going, and that's up to everyone here if you would like to see the GitHub integration with the VS Code. I'm glad to try that now, and I'm glad to just warn. Oh, there's some people who have gone off and they're doing just that right now. But I will try to put the most recent program onto GitHub. So that's all up to everyone here.
Which software do you like better, GitHub or GitLab?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I've tried both and they're both about the same, and they're not exactly synchronized in their security settings, but they're both similar in that they're requiring two-factor authentication and more stringent security measures. Essentially, they're the same. And when you run Git, it doesn't know the difference unless you're really technical and some of the very subtle differences. I never noticed the difference at my level.
And also that is good that like GitHub actually cares about, does like all of this with security, because that means that they care a lot about their users.
Yeah.
Because if a company does not care about their users, they're probably not going to, they're not going to be implementing all these security features. Because they would not care less.
So, and one interesting thing about GitLab, it's based in the Ukraine. I didn't know that until
Oh, wow.
into it. But for all intents and purposes, it just functions according to Git, which is an open source software package. The original reason I went to GitLab is because Microsoft, I'm not really I put it this way, I'm a real fan of open source, so I stay as open source as possible.
Open source is good.
Yeah.
Like,
so that was partly why I switched to GitLab, although I've switched back to GitHub as part of the GitHub. It's supported by First with some of the features, so I'm back on GitHub for that reason.
and also like the good thing about GitHub is that like there is also like a private option to like, if like there are things that like you're not ready to like reveal to the world yet, because like they may still be in development, you could just set like the repository as private.
Excellent. And I'm sure you can do that on GitLab. You may have to pay for it. I'm not sure how they set it up. But they are basically for organizations of various levels to be able to develop their code at various levels of privacy or openness.
Yeah.
So the step that I would suggest for everyone to take, one thing that we can do, how to get a GitHub repository initiated and then sent up into the cloud. And that's something maybe I might want to play around with and like find the most efficient sort of set of steps as the on GitHub itself. It may be that we have to initiate a new move this over here. Yeah, on GitHub, we may need to initiate a new repository first, and then download it, and then put code in it, and so on and so on, before it works. Or it may just work on someone else's computer, and it may be just an idiosyncrasy of my computer that it's not set up right. So it'd be interesting to see if when you go to your repository on VS Code, if it is able to set up on GitHub like I was showing there. So maybe we can have feedback on that next week. Next week, we won't have a coding session, but we could have a little feedback about this issue. Because I'm just suspecting if I do this now, it'll take me a few minutes before I figure out the most efficient way to do it. So any reflections here? A few more misses. It could be, actually, I haven't. So there's an interesting connection or question here. Liam is saying, trying to commit some changes, and it's asking me to give my username and password for Git. One thing that you can do to overcome that, there is a way to do some settings in GitHub so you don't have to do that every time. At the moment, if you type them in one by one, it will work. But how to, it's like storing credentials.
You're not sharing your screen if like you didn't know.
Oh yeah, I was just searching it quickly there. I'll share now. How can I save username and password in Git? And here it is, git config global credential helper store. And then in here, well that, oh yeah, now I'm just remembering that might be one way we had to do it, but I don't know if that works anymore. We also may have to like store a SSH key. So yes, again, it has changed so much. I'm not, oh, go ahead.
Could you paste that in chat?
Sure. You can try it. I'm having a feeling, now that I'm recalling my time with Git back in September, that this was not enough to do it anymore. This used to be enough to do that. We may have to install an SSH key for a repository. And just looking at my GitHub here, you see I have an SSH key for my repository.
What is an SSH key?
So that's a secure shell key, and it is a security feature that allows the computer to supply a code, and the answer to the code is here, and there's a unique combination to allow the GitHub to know that your computer is authorized to access this particular account. Again, it's a anti-hacking feature. And so there is a whole set of, there's a whole procedure for adding on SSH keys. And you can look that up as well for your particular machine. It should be here. Personal profile. Oh yeah, generating SSH keys. So you can go here for generating SSH keys. So I'm going to explore this a little, and hopefully maybe next week in the mentor session, I'll just have a little bit about this in case there are some more questions, because it's something that'll have to be worked out for the community, as that's one of the most technically difficult things to do, to get GitHub working smoothly with your computer. So I think I'm going to stop it there, but I'll be very happy to continue in email conversation with you if you have a particular issue on your computer, and we can work together to make sure that GitHub is going to work on your computer.
Oh, wait, so we're not going to be talking about GitHub anymore?
No, I think we will, but I just don't want to do it right now because it actually requires a little concentration. I wanted to work out a few issues first, and maybe I'll post something. And then if you have an issue with it, we can look at it. I would actually, if you would like to share your screen, we can, if you have a technical issue right now, we might be able to get you closer if you have an issue right now.
I'm just not sure what I'm supposed to do to get it to work. I've tried putting in the commands, but
can you
doesn't.
share your screen and just try to get somewhere with it?
Yeah.
Would that be possible?
I can't share my screen while you're screen sharing.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll just take my view to the standard. Okay. All right, so can we go to the Git repository on the side there? It says 16. There we are. And oh, it looks okay. Can you type in a message like testing 1, 2, 3 at the top where it says message? And then do a check mark. Click the check mark to say, yes, we're committing those changes. Oh, yes, we can configure user.name and user.email. You can actually do that in the terminal at the bottom there, or open Git log and see what it says there. Okay, so now type in git config -- global user.email and then your email.
It says it's a read-only editor.
Oh, that's strange. Go to terminal then. Okay, now try git config global or -- global user.email and then a space and then in quotes your email, which you used for the git.
Wait, I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay. Why is it like? Wait, why can't I click on the text? Wait,
Text.
wait, what happened?
It's hard to see where your cursor
Oh,
is.
geez. Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, and then just enter.
Yeah, and that was at your email, and then do the same,
Yes.
but for user.name, and then in quotes put your name.
Just like my full name, or?
Yeah. Good. Okay, now go back to that check mark and press it. See, try the testing 1, 2, 3 again, I guess. Or maybe it already accepted it. Okay, now the three dots right beside it, and push. And see what that's giving you.
It says it has no remotes configured to push to.
Okay. So we're getting somewhere. So it says no remotes configured to push to, does it?
That's the same problem that you were having, William.
Yeah. So in this case.
Here we are.
Provide a remote, a name, press enter. There, now try again. Try the 3 dots again.
Wait, it says provide a remote name.
Okay, we may actually have to initiate a new remote on Git, make an empty repository. So maybe we can go to your Git and try that.
Wait, I've already made an empty repository.
Online?
Yes.
Okay, so do you have the name for it exactly?
Yes.
And did you just put that in the remote name there?
Yeah.
Okay, if you try that with the 3 dots again, maybe it will let us.
Wait, no, wait, I clicked.
But you may need something like Git, something like a HTTPS github.com / your username and then / your repository name.
Oh, wait, how would I get that?
So go to the website where you have your Git repository, and we can actually glean it off of the website. I'm thinking that you're only sharing your VS Code because I can't see that, but
oh yeah.
Anyway, if you copy and paste it, it should be good.
Wait. Okay, so share screen, you share. Just screen. Okay, wait, so how do we glean it?
So now books layer, there it is, HTTPS, there it is. That's the,
okay.
Copy that and then go back to your VS Code.
Okay.
Paste that in there.
So that's what a remote name is.
That's it, and enter. Now, get fatal is not a valid remote name.
What?
There is a dash after the HTTPS. That's kind of strange. I don't know why that's the case. Can we go just see that for a moment?
Open git log. There isn't a dash.
Strange.
Wait. Wait, maybe I can try again. Just make sure that. Okay. Push. Add remote. Add remote GitHub. Okay.
Dash there. Okay.
No dash. It adds a dash.
That's so strange. Not a valid remote name. Open git log maybe.
Yeah.
And we go to the bottom. Is not a valid remote name. HTTPS. Let's try it in the command line here. Can you just get the terminal? Go to the terminal and now type in git add remote, or git remote add. I forgot here.
And then
that exact. It might be remote add.
Oh, there we go.
And it worked?
Wait, I'm not sure.
Interesting. Oh, usage. Okay, let's see. Git, let me just find out here. Git remote add. Oh. Okay, there's a slightly different syntax for the command line according to this website. Okay, so can we go back to that command? And we
Yeah.
add one more thing. After the add, when the Doom music kicks in, we'll put that as a separate name before the get URL. And that's how they're doing it online. So get remote add when the music kicks in, space, and then the same URL, because we're putting the name of it separate.
Like this?
And let's see here.
I don't know how to look.
I can't quite see your output from there and the screen. Oh yeah, I can see it just barely here and it looks okay. Try enter and see what happens. Oh, it seems to work. Now you can go back to it and try with 3 dots. Push.
Wait,
Actually,
wait.
not pull, push.
Yeah, push. Wait, no configured push destination.
Okay. Okay, let's try that now. Get no configured push destination.
It says I need to either specify the URL from the command line or configure a remote repository.
Okay. Can we check your get remote add one more time? Do you have, can you go to the terminal and press up so we see the previous code?
Yeah. This is it.
Okay. So I can barely read it here.
I don't know how I can move it down. There's no way to scroll.
When I put it to full screen, it disappears behind your Zoom buttons.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's now I can see it. Okay. And https get.com .get. Okay.
Yeah, there wasn't any response.
There may be one more remote command here. There's a configure. Oh, can we try this? Get remote -v and see what the output is.
-v.
Yeah.
Does that look
Okay.
reasonable?
HTTPS, github.com, all of that looks perfectly fine. Okay, can we try this on the command line and see where it fails? Can you try git add a with a capital A? Not in there, in the terminal. We'll just try in the terminal just to see what's failing. Git add -a.
-a.
Capital A. Enter. Git commit with a -m and a space. So git commit m and then a space and in quotes and any message like testing 1 2 3.
Just
And space quotes testing 1 2 3 4, so we can distinguish it, I guess. Good, and then git push origin master. Good, now let's see.
make sure you have the correct access rights and the repository exists.
That's it, and I think the access rights, you're going to have to generate an SSH key, and I think that's where we're at.
Okay.
So now, if you go to your Git website, and let's go to your top right-hand corner, your username or your user account button at the top right-hand corner, and under settings at the bottom there. And we should be able to SSH and generate a generate an SSH key. Good. But in this case, are you on Windows right now?
Yes.
Do you have Git Bash?
Yes.
Actually, we can use the same terminal. We can now go there and type in SSH keygen, but we're gonna have to get the instructions for your Windows. So let's go back to the Git and just make
Wait,
sure we get the
where
right
am-
name.
Wait, where am I supposed to type that in though? Git bash?
Hold on. I don't think we need the git bash because we'll have the command line from the VS Code. But what we do need is the exact command. We have to go back to GitHub on the website and go to the instructions, press the back button and SSH keys, and then generating SSH keys. Click on that one. That's it. And then since it's Windows, let's generating a new SSH key. Good. That's it.
Alright.
Okay, and then that's it. There's the command SSH keygen with that T and all of that exactly, except you have your email. And we're going to go to the terminal in the VS Code. We'll have to make sure that when we paste it, we're going to have to modify it before we hit enter. First of all, the $ has to come out and the email has to go in.
Why does the $ need to come out?
Because it was not part of the command. It was just copied there.
Okay, that looks good.
Let's try that. It's going to ask us a question here. Enter the file. So there you see it's going to be users, Lisa A, and then .ssh. So we're going to have to find that later. Hit enter. Good. And then enter for no passphrase at the moment. Enter and enter again. Good.
Whoa.
So now it's done. We can go to C users Lisa. Then maybe in a files there. Yeah, C users Lisa A. And now it should be under .ssh. There it is. And there's the public. Don't open the private one, just open the public one. And oh no, publisher. No. Windows.
Oh, geez, sorry.
You have to open it with open it with the text editor or something. Microsoft. Go look for an app in the Microsoft store or more apps. That's better.
Oh yeah.
Nope.
Notepad. Notepad is your friend.
Windows makes me laugh. Okay, and there we go. Can copy all of that. And then we'll go into paste that into the place where you were before on the website.
Wait, oh, whoops. Okay.
No, not there. Go
Wait,
back to the website.
in the website.
Yeah. And go back because we're going to now adding a new SSH key to your GitHub account. There. Oh, whoops. Let's see if we can go back just to SSH. Press the back button 1 or 2 times. There it is, new SSH key. The green button there, and paste the key, and then type of my repo or something that you can identify when the music something. Testing 1, 2, 3. That could work too.
Testing 867.
And add SSH key. Good. And now let's go back and try the exact same command in VS Code. It should work now. I'm hoping. If it doesn't, I'll do some research because I'm not entirely sure about that. Let's try the VS Code and up. If you press the up button.
Yeah.
No, press the up button 1 or 2 more times. More. There, git push origin master.
Okay.
Good.
Still asks for access rights.
Yes. Origin does not appear to be a Git repository at the moment. There could be one more thing.
There's nothing on the remote repository, I don't think.
Can we just try git remote -v again and see what it's. Oh, and can we go to your remote repository and make sure that it's called master and not main? Because that could be another issue.
Wait,
under code, there we are. And it hasn't been initialized.
Wait, oh. What? I thought, oh.
Maybe import code, create a repository. Ah, there it is. Okay, you see the commands on or create a new repository in the command line? Do that.
Yeah. So just copy all of this?
Yes, but one at a time.
Ah.
No, first with the echo. So you copy the echo, and then we'll go back to your VS Code command line.
Wait, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it
Oh, I
like
see. You're
this.
just going to do all of them at once. Yeah. So I'm going to leave you to try to do that. I'll have to go now, but please email me, and we can do another session to make sure you get this. And I'm glad we did this because hopefully this will help the rest of the community.
I have a quick question. How do you
Sure.
copy stuff onto the clipboard?
You need to press Windows V and it brings up a clipboard. If you turn on clipboard history, you can then press Control. Once you've copied some stuff, you press Control V again, and it brings up in the.
Nice.
Like
Oh, wow,
that.
that's very useful.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad we had this session because lots of things we're able to learn. Thank you so much, Liam and Ryan. And it was a really great time working with you this fall. Please email me to make sure you let me know about your Git, if it's working particularly, or if it's not, we can schedule some more time.
Okay.
Great.
Mine is working.
Excellent. Good to hear that. And did you do pretty much the same thing there, Ryan? Or did you
No, like for some reason it took way shorter.
Okay, that's good. We may have taken a slightly different turn there. Anyway.
It says it reinitialized it.
Okay. Oops. Hopefully that'll be fine.
It says it's reinitializing an existing Git repository.
Oops.
But it says it wasn't initialized.
Okay. And then commit, first commit, see if that will work. Good. All right. Almost there. Branch.
Hey, it's saying it needs to make it main.
Yeah, that's fine. Just try git branch and main. That's a new sort of convention in Git to use main instead of master. And then there's the git remote add. Oh, it likes that. And let's see if it'll push origin main.
And
sign in. Oh, it still wants us to sign in, but at least it's giving us something.
Yeah.
No, that's what happened to me.
Okay.
So now basically you just need to sign in with your browser, and then you can commit it.
Excellent. There we go.
So just authorize, and I believe there may be like one more step, which is just related to just like signing in and just set it on. There should be like one more step, which is like a very easy step.
Okay.
And that looks like it.
Try committing again, or
actually we could check the internet. It probably updated it now. Code. Yeah, there it is.
Great, nice. Oh, finally.
A victory for FRC. Wonderful. I'll look forward to seeing you guys, hopefully at a competition sometime soon. And yeah, hope to see you.
Are you going to be in any competitions in Canada?
In where?
In Canada.
Yes, I'm going to be in probably 6 out of the 10 competitions here in Ontario. I can't go to all of them because there's some of them on the same weekend. For example, going to Humber, Georgian, possibly Windsor, possibly York, and so on. I can't remember the list offhand.
We're going to York.
Okay, that's great. So hopefully we'll see you there.
Yeah, I would like to meet you. I would like to meet you and your team in person.
That would be really great to see you. Actually, I don't have a team this year as I'm working with the FRC directly. So
I thought you can still have a team even if you're working with the FRC directly.
But I'm actually working closely with 2 teams from my 2 previous schools just to advise them. So I may still be, I'm not really on the team officially, but at least I'll be visiting them to see how they're doing. And any other school, of course, would like a visit, I'm very happy to go there too.
Yeah.
Well, hope to meet you then, and hope you have a good week. Our next week will be about preparing for the kickoff. And of course, any other questions you may have about this material here, glad to answer those.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the instructions.
Great. See you all
Finally.
very
Thank you
soon,
so much, William.
and take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.